Hello people, welcome to another edition of Dosage Review, and this is another knife review. And tonight we're looking at the Real Steel Sacra. This is an interesting little piece. This is the all black one. It comes in a couple different versions. This is the all black with the gold. Again, there's several versions of it. Interesting piece. This is sort of an integral liner, integrated back spacer, and all of that. A couple of things. First, let's get into some of these awesome little measurements here. Tip to tail. Little over, let's go this way so you can see the numbers. Hey, quit touching it there. Quit touching it there. About 7.5. And we have tip to tail, right? Tip to scale, or just about 3 3/8. And of course, along the actual cutting edge is approximately the same, about 3 1/8 or so. Interesting little bit. There's those measurements. Quick weigh in here for all those who are interested. It actually has an interesting, it's pretty, 2.79 ounces with a steel liner and G10 and a full-size blade. I'm gonna put that out there again. It is milled inside, massively milled in that liner for weight reduction, but it's pretty light for its size. All right, couple others here. We'll do this real quick. 0. And boom. 0.1165. That is approximately 3 millimeters with, what is that, tens, hundreds, thousands, 15 10,000ths ground off. And it is not the thinnest thing behind the edge, but that doesn't mean it's super thick either. It's pretty good. I'm going to go 20 thousandths, 21 thousandths behind the edge. Kind of thick behind the edge, but let's get into that a little bit. It is K110 or highly controlled D2. This is just D2 with really tight, essentially tight specifications. So there's less leeway in, the percentages and stuff. So you get a more consistent heat treat and all that stuff. So it's really good D2 essentially. Not quite CPM D2, not just regular D2 either. It's a fairly tight bit. And that actually brings quite a bit to the table. But before we go too far, the Spyderco sandwich and PM2, there you go. Look, it is definitely smaller. Oh, I better do the full sandwich here because really, this is not a large knife. This is fairly large on the blade size. As you can see, its cutting edge is closer to the PM2 than the Para 3. But its size is more like the Para 3. And that's actually really interesting how that works. A couple more here. It's just a blur. All right, as you can see, blur gets a lot of edge for that size, and not just any leak, but a random leak. Much closer on the leak, but with a little bit more, it's close on hand space and a little bit more edge. Usually that's not something I see. The leak is a pretty good mix of different bits there. And of course, in similar size, bug out, we've got similar edge to the bug out. Similar, if not greater, hand space on the Sacra. And Civivi Elementum. Again, similar hand space, a bit more edge. It's kind of an interesting little bit there as to how this goes down. And of course, this is it compared to my Wiener. As you can see, my Wiener may not be longer, but it is thicker and better shaped. All right, you guys. So let's get into it. Number one, the action is fantastic. The thumb studs are placed just outside. There's a little bit in the cutting path, but not completely. They keep that sharpening choil out there. On the design, the DamNice criteria here, the design, aesthetics, mechanics, noteworthy points, intended purpose, cost to value ratio, and expectations and or requests. The design, very tight. This is almost what most people tend to call like a gentleman's knife. It tucks very nicely to within its profile. That back spacer integral, very strong, right? As well as giving it the rounded kind of bit. It's shadow boxed on the G10 as well as contoured. Let me see if I can get it. So the G10's contoured, you got rounding there, and the shadow boxing gives you a little bit more rounding. Very, very nice. There's, with the long, almost the Gumby style right here, we got this long, gives you lots of hand space. Even in a Gorilla Grip, I have to spread my fingers a little bit to it, and I have large width, medium length. My hand here, so it'll probably even fit large hands. It does the saber grip quite nicely, pinch grip without choking up, as well as pinch grip choking up. The thumb studs gives you a nice platform to pinch on, and there's enough sharpening choil to keep your finger sort of out of the sharpened edge there. Does the same thing with going up. Pick a sliver. Very, very nice on the ergos. Tucked in so, and of course the lock here, the crossbar lock. Very smooth, right? Bearings in there on that crossbar lock. Let me double check here. Pretty sure that's bearings. I think that's what I saw, yeah. Let me double check here. Oh, that's hard. It moves like bearings, but it might even be washers. But it's pretty good. D2, thick behind the edge with a with a pretty solid factory edge. All the way out to the tip. It's a little rough, but it's apex nicely for a factory edge. So yeah, the design on here, relatively cheap. This folded steel that's drilled for lightness, which is fantastic. Reversible pocket clip, tip up only, contoured with lots of good notches and stuff. Pretty fantastic. If anyone is wondering, I'm in the middle of a heat wave right now. It's approximately 96 degrees where I'm at with 70% humidity. If you see me sweating on here, if it looks a little weird, it's just warm out. So yeah, the design on this, I think, is good. It's right there where it's very well done. The G10 is extremely well contoured. It's got some good traction bits without getting in the way. The color scheme on this one in particular, the black and gold, I found to be very, very, it spoke to me as far as it's very classy. The black on all hardware, and the only points of color are on the blade and the crossbar as well as thumb stud. And the aesthetics on it with this drop point and a little bit are fantastic. The little bit of ramp right there gives you a place to put your finger when you're doing the scoring type cuts, so you got a little ramp to get your finger on, as well as if you're choking up to get to the tip. But it really just lends itself well for a smaller knife to lots and lots of different things, which is really good because the aesthetics of it looks kind of, in my opinion, just like a good plain knife. It looks knifey without looking too knifey. It shows you what it's supposed to do without overdoing it. And I do appreciate that because this corner here, if you're going into like the scoring grip, it just tucks nicely into your palm. This gives you a very, very significant amount of control when it comes to the pokey or scoring, or you're trying to get in. It gives you a ton of control, as well as a solid grip on it. This tucking into your hand part really does, it gives you for piercing tasks and stuff like that. Gives you a lot of power. Not that you necessarily need it for most EDC tasks, but it is there. It's the control. It's the ability to control very, very, very granular control. So down to the very last little bit, I can pick. If I didn't have a whole bunch of, as you can see, I'll try and hold it steady. If I didn't have a bunch of caffeine on me that made me shake like that, because I do love coffee, I'd probably have a lot more control. This emphasizes my lack. But other than that, it is definitely appreciated. So yeah, it does. The aesthetics are very nice. And mechanics, perfect. Nearly perfect on the mechanics. It smooth, drops, very linear. As you can see, I can control it with the crossbar. Right? It's very, very good. And the spring back, pretty nice, right? So great. Got both the thumb studs work perfectly for all sorts of different flicks, as well as the crossbar. The detent has a fair amount of push out of the spring before it actually gets loose. So it's got pretty good snap back on that one. And for me, the mechanics just about on point. It really is hard to get wrong with the mechanics on this. It does exactly what it's supposed to. The crossbar lock makes it super easy and super convenient. And man, it's just that good of a mechanical action. And the noteworthy points on this is right there with it. It's an integral backspacer. It's an integral liner with some G10 scales thrown on the top of it, which is nice. It's a steel liner that's been milled out. The noteworthy point is just how good of an EDC knife this is. There's some little things like the rolled back spacer, right? This single one piece liner that is also the back spacer. One standoff to help support it in that, so you don't ever squeeze this too far that you can't get it in. That helps also with the maintain the screw hold for the pocket clip. That gives you a lot of there. It's really robust construction while also being fairly minimalist, which I enjoy. That's really the noteworthy point on it, is that backspacer and really the comfort of all that contouring. Intended purpose on this is an EDC knife. This is an EDC knife extraordinaire that packs up nicely. It's under 3 ounces with a 3-inch plus, 3 1/8 to 3 1/4 inch blade. It's well in the lightweight side, so it's easy to carry in lots of different pants and lots of different occasions. And it just delivers. The K110 or D2 with a little bit thick behind the edge, but a good apexing that's pretty even. Very sharp, will last a long time, has enough toughness with that geometry to go high flat saber type grind with the swedge. Does most EDC tasks outstandingly well. The blade shape and geometry and everything really lends itself to a lot of good uses. And that's really what it does. It's intended to be that. It doesn't tuck in, there's other ones that I want to do a couple. So like even the banter, the profile on this is slim. What's another? Here's a good one. Even the CJRB Pyrite doesn't get as slim as this in the pocket. There's lots of other things I could go in, but just to go back to one, this is much more similar to something like the Leak, where it just doesn't, the Leak is, in some places it's a little smaller, but with that flipper tab, it's basically the same profile height as the Kershaw Leak. That makes it very easy to put in the pocket and carry around. It's very slim, very unobtrusive, doesn't have a lot of stuff, and fits in the pocket well. Fantastic. Comes in a lot of different colors as well. I personally like the black and gold. This one just works for me. They do have some others that have the gold on the pocket clip. And this gold, really, honestly, they also have some slip joints. The Solus is one that comes to mind that has gold on the pocket clip as well. This really matches, this color they have, this bronzish gold color, matches well with khakis. It really does well when you're trying to make it so it doesn't stand out on your clothes. The gold stuff really does match khakis quite well. And that's really, the good intended purpose on it is an EDC beast, and it delivers without a doubt. And that brings us to the cost to value ratio. This is about a $70 knife. You might find it $5 plus or minus, depending on where it is, depending on sales or something like that, right? So 10% off is, it's going to be like a $63 knife or something. That's important only because it's very competitive, right? Very competitive. You start getting into things like $80 for this CGRB button lock with the fancy stuff, right? Or even cheaper on the $55 or $60 range with the CGRB Pyrite. The Pyrite is the big one right now that I'm going to say that's out there in the market. Yeah, there's some things like the Elementum out there, but it's losing some of its cachet. Out there in the wild, it doesn't have the same pull that it used to. There's lots of good new knives, but none of them quite fit as this. This is one of those ones that you're going to hear me go up. The cost to value ratio isn't super high, but it's not even close to low. Is it at the same place as, say, like a QSP Penguin? No, it's not. But you get a lot more. Just to go over real quick, liner lock, D2, all that stuff. It's just you don't get as much as this. It doesn't fit in the pocket. It's not easy. The one that brings the highest bit to this is going to be the Pyrite. CGRB Pyrite is probably the biggest competitor. There's a reason why it's so great. Yeah, you get AR RPM 9. Depends on the thing. I don't have a regular Pyrite, just the alt Pyrite in the regular stuff. Very, very cool. Super light. These are nice. It's not as slim. It's not quite the same. You can get a lot more colors on this stuff. You can do a lot to do it, but the Pyrite right now is one of those value leaders in the marketplace that's just really hard to beat. There's a reason it's selling so well, and they're delivering a ridiculous knife for a ridiculous amount of value. And CJRB should maintain a Pyrite in their lineup for quite a long time. But this is the competition that this is going. Yeah, it's a button lock. It's not the crossbar lock. You can get all sorts of things. It's not the same steel. You can get them more expensive in different steel, and so on and so forth. But straight out the box, for $15, $20 more, yeah, you don't get a lot more except for the crossbar lock and a little bit of style. Does that mean it's bad? No, because I actually do really like how much smaller this knife is and how compact it is in the pocket. There's different uses that this fulfills that the Pyrite just doesn't. The Pyrite is a longer knife, or not necessarily longer, but it's not much longer at least. It's slightly longer in there, slightly wider in the profile. As a compact knife, this does well. To give you an idea of just how close it is to really small, it isn't that much smaller or that much larger than something like the Banter. Or not the Banter, but the Lander. Speaking of the Banter, it's really not that much larger than something like the Banter either. But you get more blade and a little bit more space. And it's thinner across the height, on the profile height. So you get a lot for the value. And that's something I really, really like about this. And that's it's really hard to, if we're going on, I'm trying to readjust my scale to do like a wine scale. So it's a 0 to 100 instead of like 4 stars or 10 or 1 to 10 or whatever. But this, like if I'm still on the 4 or 5 stars, this is like a 4-star cost to value ratio. It's not the highest, it's just below there, but it's still really good, right? There's cheaper ones out there that provide you just a little bit more cost to value. There's some more expensive ones that give you quite a bit for a bit more money, but this really does split the difference. I mean, like I said, you're getting around $90 or so, I believe, for the titanium and micarta, for all that stuff on the button lock Pyrite. So it's a little bit more for it. So it splits the difference. There's a lot of other $70 ones, $70 knives out there that are just fantastic. But this just really provides you an all-around EDC knife for a decent price. If you're one of those people who just needs one knife, you're like, I need to replace it, and I'm looking to do something, under $80, D2's fine, but I want a crossbar lock, I would highly recommend the Sacra. This is really hard to beat for the price as far as what it does. It's good edge retention and all that. And that really brings me to the expectations or requests. I expected this knife to be okay. I was really impressed with the soulless slip joint, and I've heard a lot of good stuff about the Luna knives. So I wanted to give Real Steel another chance to see what I could get from them. Let's see if we can rearrange this now that I kicked it. And I expected it to be okay. It did beat those expectations. Part of that's because I had too low expectations. I didn't expect it to be as good as it is. And also, it's really, really good. There's no major significant things to sit here and complain about. Like taking it apart, it's a single piece. You got a couple of screws and the pivot, and this whole thing's coming apart. It's super easy to maintain, very easy to clean out. It's got all the right stuff. Its action is fantastic. It meets its intended purpose. It's got a great cost to value ratio, and there's just a lot there. Would I like it if it had better steel? Yeah. But what else? There's not much else that needs to change. Would this be cool if it was in CPM 154 or S35 yen? Yeah, it would be cool. In fact, S35 yen is probably the one that I would request the most. simply because it's very similar to D2, but would be stainless, and it's relatively inexpensive now. You can find a lot. S35 yen is on a lot of knives, both high end and lower end. It's just a good all around steel for toughness. I personally like S45 yen a little bit better, but S35 yen is out there and it's relatively inexpensive. So yeah, something like this in an edition with S35 yen or a slightly more expensive version would be nice. But I understand if you're trying to sell these as real, so you're like, we need to sell the D2 or the K110 before we do anything more. And that's a very, very good sound business proposition right there. But this does everything very good. That would be my only request. Maybe a little bit more. I wouldn't mind seeing some holes in the back of the spacer. That would just be cool. You could get, either, I know it weakens it a little bit, but even just some that give it some drainage or anything to really give it a different character. Put some lines or something down there, right? I know it weakens it just a little, but a little bit of something, maybe some artistic stuff on the back there. But again, that increases the cost, and so we start losing cost to value ratio for something that's basically aesthetic. So it's really hard to request a lot more. They did a very, very good job of including only what they needed to without much more on this knife at a fairly reasonable price. Very, very well done. I want to give this a great review. If I'm in the 100-point scale, this is around the 88 points. Right, I get great design. I think this is a good classic design. They took a lot of cues from previous knives and how it fits in the hand, and were able to really take something from it. The aesthetics of it is good. It's got a good balance, a good symmetry, without being so symmetrical that it looks like another version of itself on the blade from the handle, which isn't necessarily bad, but it does, change the stylistic notions of the knife a bit. The mechanics, pretty much flawless. Excuse me. As many have noted, excellence is sort of the default now. It's more notable when something isn't good than when it is. Most pocket knives in the market today are, if it's one of the major brands, are pretty well done. The single biggest problem I have seen and I still worry about is steel. And if it's what they claim it is it actually D2? Is it actually K110? Most of the good brands do. They don't skimp on that. They pay for the actual stuff. And if it goes through, most retailer does. But again, I remember back when ATI and NVIDIA would absolutely charge up their video cards for testing. So any testing would have to be done randomly and not by the same reviewer. But as far as just trusting the steel that they say it is, sure. Assuming that it's K110, yeah, it's good. And that's the biggest thing. Could it be 8CR13? Yeah, but I don't think it is. I haven't sharpened it yet. That's still yet to come. But this is one of those knives that is a budget knife. And much like the Pyrite, it's going to stay in my collection. This is a good high-value knife. D2, a great color scheme. I like how they kept the color points only in certain places. So it really, really does well. It's hard to complain. It's fantastic to watch. So that's a great bit. They really brought everything together. The noteworthy points, this semi-integral construction here, the integral liners and all that sort of stuff. Fantastic little bit. And its intended purpose as a compact, almost gentlemanly EDC that can do hard work hits it on the head. This is exactly what this knife is. Does it very well. Lots of good points. And it is most definitely a package piercer, a saran wrap or shrink wrap slicer, a cardboard carver, and an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. While the backwards bit isn't necessarily, the drop point blade and shape really, really, really helps it to do like that upside down stuff where you're going either to to cut a cord or open up an envelope. It does it all very well. So that's important to know and important to look at. And I mean, really, guys, this is a great EDC value right here. The Sacra with the rolled over back, the integral type construction, very well done. Crossbar lock that has great spring action as well as control on the drop. Smooth, hydraulic, controllable action, right? Absolutely great when it comes to that stuff. So it hits all the mechanical points. The single biggest thing is going to be, does it speak to you? Do you look at this and say, you know what? That is a good knife. That's worth my money. And that's really the important part for a lot of these things. For me, I would tell you, it's worth the money if you want it. There's lots of great little details on it without it being too expensive. There's a lot of attention to detail, a lot of very, very good work having been done, as well as manufacturing capability, and the end result is pretty good. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up because this is a very, very recommendable EDC knife. I highly suggest, if it speaks to you, that you do make the purchase. It's well worth it. And Real Steel, it sort of reminds me of the Reiki or however you say it. These guys don't do a whole lot, but 14C28N and a few different models, but they usually do them pretty good. And Real Steel is in some ways along those same lines. They don't have a ton of models. They don't always have a lot of stuff, but the ones they do, they seem to do very well, and they put a lot of effort into it. And I really like that and appreciate it. And they seem to, even if you don't like it, they seem to always put forth good product. And in the knife world, you can't ask for too much more out of a high volume Chinese production company. You just really can't. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Recommendable, 88 out of 100, 4.5 stars if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, very, very well done. DamNice, very good, very well done on the Real Steel Sacra. And I'm going to wrap it up. Go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like. Be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your Dose of Drew. I am said Drew. You guys have a great rest of your night.